for reasons we don't need to go into, I'm transferring, remember the other bus had plate glass windows, and this one you can tell has window frames? I need to fix something. So I saved the scrap from the other bus, and now I'm putting it on here. And whether you're lining up, this is very atypical. You don't normally put the solid vinyl on after the window perf. You put the window perf on, that way you can see through it to line it up. But all I did was pick certain elements, like there's a dark spot right here at the end of this line, and all I did was find it on the window perf and line it up. There's a dark spot here. In fact, it's off a little bit, so let's go ahead and just move it over a little bit, okay? And now you can see this dark spot lines up. There's a line there. And close counts here. The human brain is going to fill in a lot of defects in the installs, gaps, things that are maligned. And that's the other thing too. If you're within a quarter of an inch when installing, you're good to go. So how do we do this? Whether you're installing a whole panel or a partial panel, you're going to float the panel, right? Whether it's window perf or a solid vinyl or whatever, you want to tent it to keep it off. You want to glass it out to keep it smooth and make sure that it's all, you're going to have high spots. Whenever you have a high spot, that's where you start. You cut the high spot first, and then you reseat the panel and get it all glassed out, and then you pick your next high spot. You work from there, and eventually you're going to get to a spot where everything is on the same plane, all the high spots are taken care of, and now you can just work in the panel. So I was concerned about whether or not this panel would meet the edge here. It does, so I'm fine with that. And see, I just pulled it off the bus. I want it to stick to the window frame, so now it's floating, okay, all the way up. Because when it sticks to things, you can't move it easily. So you saw me do it. I'm pulling up, I'm glassing it out, and I'm pulling up and away. You know what? You can see that this doesn't line up with that. No one's going to notice. No one's going to notice. The human brain will fill in a lot of defects, and I don't normally advertise that. I don't use it as one of my core install techniques, but it's a truth. Look at some of the full wraps that you can look at, and you'll see. Anyway, so I'm going to find my high spot now. The other thing too is I said glass it out. It doesn't matter. I'm cutting this area out. It doesn't really matter if it's loose or anything like that. The other thing too is there's my corner, there's my edge. I have another corner right here. I've wrapped so many of these buses that I just know. So I don't care about this, and I don't care about this. Right? So if I need to cut it to lift and pull or manipulate, that's fine. So we're going to come down here and run this out. Okay, and so here's a problem. I got a little bit of window frame sticking out here. I'll show you how to handle that in a minute. When I go to cut, I use a good sharp blade that's clean. I make sure my vinyl's tight. I make sure it's seated flat against the surface because it's going to want to roll up. And see how my knife is down at this angle and not like this or something weird? You know, you're going to have to adjust this angle, the roll, as well as this, as well as this. I like to cut in like this. And now we're going to get to the corner. Look where the butt of the knife is. If you were to draw the radius of this circle, it's going to be right about here. So when my knife hits that point, that's when I start curving. I'm no longer pulling my knife forward. Now I'm rolling it in my hand like that. See how my hand didn't move, but the knife did? And I got this nice cut around the radius, and now I bring my hand straight down. I find my corner. And actually, there's a little ramp right here. It's just another thing that I've learned. So what I'll do is I'll come in at that angle, right? Come back, smooth this out. Again, it doesn't have to be an extreme angle because this is actually square, but I still like to cut it at a little bit of a downward angle. Right? So when it comes to the inside, which is the much more challenging part here, there's a rubber bit and there's a metal rail, and this is the opposite. I would love to cut like this against that rail right there, but you figure it out. You got to tuck the tip, the very, very, very tip of your knife just on the metal and kind of feel the rubber. If you cut too deep, you'll end up cutting little strings. Shut your knife. You'll end up cutting little strings. It'll be an issue later on when you go to do the window perf or whatever. And I'm holding my knife in such a way that I'm controlling a very precise amount with how I move my finger on the knife. They're pressed together nice and tight. It's a nice tight little bundle. In any case, so that way I'm riding on my middle finger and I'm controlling it with my thumb and forefinger, and it's all in the wrist. It's all wrist and elbow and leading and following. You're gonna have to just practice. Okay, and I'm actually gonna hold on to that because of up here. All right, watch my wrist. Are you ready? Just like that. Now, a second ago I told you to keep an eye out because I had a bald spot down here that's sticking out. Nobody's going to notice certain things. A 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, hell, that's 1.5 inches off. Nobody's ever going to notice it. So I know that this is where I want it to be. I'm going to come on down here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and cut this because I know I want this panel. This is where this panel needs to be, but I want to move this panel just a little bit. So what I can do is unseat it, roll it down, and pull it a little bit and cheat that out. And this is less critical in this particular installation. But I was just showing you in the event that you have that kind of issue, you can adjust your vinyl to compensate. Oof, this is rough. Now, just goes to show you, as good as I am, as good as my installs look, I still make mistakes, man. This one was stupid. I installed the panel. I installed the street side panel on the curb side because of methodology. Normally the roll comes out of the box a certain way, and in this particular instance I didn't set it down in the order that I usually do. So when I went to grab the panel after I had prepped it, it was the wrong panel for that side of the bus. So I ended up having to transfer it off. There was all kinds of angular cuts from where the other side of the bus, whatever. So this is an interesting bit here. Now I've got this cut here. This is secured all the way around. Everything's nice and tight. It's not all wrinkly and shit like that. And if it is, maybe you want to do what I did down here and reseat it and just tighten it up a little bit. You can do a lot. You can get away with a lot with vinyl, man. And that's not a bad thing. It's one of the advantages of vinyl. So I just cut that off. I got a nice clean edge. Now I'm done with it. Everything looks like it lines up well enough. What you're going to hear from a lot of rappers is you have to start at the corner and work your way out. And in some instances, that's super duper tree. Not always for us. Like you saw me work from the straight into the corner when I was cutting. A lot of rappers will tell you have to go from the corner out. Like I just said, doesn't always work that way with buses. And there's reasons for it. But all you need to know is that in this particular instance, if I were to start here, I'm going to be driving the vinyl away from the center, and it's going to want to tilt down, and I'm going to end up with this crazy ass wrinkly thing down here. So in this particular instance, what you want to do is start at the corner and work your way up. Okay, see how that laid real nice? See all those wrinkles right there? The same thing would have happened, only in the wrong direction, and it would have compounded from both sides into the corner, and it's just an incredible pain. And then we do the same thing from this side, right? And here again, I'm gonna adjust this in a second because I don't like the way that that's lining up. But what I'll do first is come up here and cut from, there's a channel that my knife just rides right. I'm not even looking. It's crazy. I'm gonna reseat this just because it'll make me feel better to get a nice clean cut. I'm gonna reseat it. Now, on one side, I know that there's rubber on the outside and there's a channel on the inside. Let's just go ahead and cut that channel. And I'm less worried about the tilt of the knife because this is recessed. There's less chance that the edge is gonna get caught by water going through the bus wash. And it's the same kind of thing. You're gonna have to practice. Make sure if your knife isn't fresh, don't use it. Go ahead and snap the blade. I'm trying out some cheap ass blades, and they're not as good as I'd like for them to be. See that? See that garbage? My regular brand increased their prices a lot. They used to be $8 for. Used to be $8 for 100. Now it's 28. Explain that one to me. Oh, it's marked down from 35. There we go. Now I got a nice sharp point. I'm going to go ahead and stick it in, but I'm going to ride the metal and feel the rubber. And I'm using this finger, and that is a straight edge, right? And it's going to be the same thing when we get down to the bottom. It's in the wrist. You got to follow the radius. And then you pull it around this way. And the only thing I was moving there was my arm. It wasn't moving my wrist or my fingers. Like, I got it locked into a position in relation to the cut that I'm making, and I just drag my hand along. And then we come up here and cut this little bit. Okay. And that's how you cut a window in. Come back and make sure that all your edges are pressed down. If it's cold or humid, you're probably going to have to use your blowtorch to just seat it. Doesn't take a whole lot. You know, it's just that with all these little slices and cuts are all failure points. And if it's not sitting on the bus nice and tight, they'll fail. They'll get lifted by the bus wash or the wind or whatever. So I'm going to finish cleaning up this mess that I made, but that's basically how you cut in a window.